Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our concepts edition for the week. I'm Devin Bedoni.
And I'm Uriel and Devin.
And today we have kind of a loose focus on meaningful metrics, i.e. understanding your current condition, and also sort of this ongoing conundrum we've been facing between the sort of paradox of move fast and break things versus slow down and plan well. And it seems like Uriel's had some good realizations over the last week, so we're gonna dive into those a bit and then have some other tidbits at the end as well.
Yeah, and I got a quote. I was grateful to be able to answer promptly, and I did. I said, "I don't know." From Mark Twain, quoted in Toyota Kata. So that was great.
Yeah, I like it.
It was sort of a chapter, and this is sort of what led to my realization about, that balance of moving fast and learning versus an emphasis on planning, like a heavy emphasis on planning. But basically, a big part of it was sort of this idea of realizing when we don't know and when we just need to, like when we're sort of taking guesses and need to just go try a thing. You know, when like conversations get a little old and everyone's just sort of stating their opinion about what they think might happen, and it's like, should we just go try it?
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah.
Saying I don't know, I feel like is undervalued.
Yeah, it is. I also grew up with some adults in my life who, if you ask them a question and they didn't know, they would maybe just make something up.
Yeah, I think we all do that a little bit. Or like take a best guess.
Yeah, take a best. It was very well intentioned, but it came across as like fact.
Right.
And in my later life, I've had to be like, don't do that. It's okay to say you don't know. Like, well, let's go look this up together.
Yeah, not only is it okay, I really think I think there's a heavy incentive to look like we know for some reason. Like that is, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about good metrics.
Yeah.
So Eliyahu Goldratt in, I think, The Goal or maybe Critical Chain or maybe one of his lectures, I forget exactly where, but he said something to the effect, and I think we quoted this in one of our episodes, that every metric needs to be completely aligned with desirable outcomes for the organization. And the reason behind that is that even if it starts off as a sort of like a placeholder metric of like, hey, we want to work on this thing, it can very easily become like people like to, KPIs, right?
Yeah.
Key performance indicators is like a management style that, I don't know, I think is pretty antithetical to Toyota, to the way Toyota does things, because it is very much, unless you are extremely careful with picking your KPIs, it is extremely prone to seeking local optimum.
Yeah.
Very specifically.
Yes.
In those performance indicators.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking a lot about sort of, so our revenues are down, which is disappointing until I kind of dug into it further and realized our profit is up. And so actually that is only good, but still on the spreadsheet, it is a bummer because you're sort of like, okay, here are revenue goals for next year. And here are revenue goals for, Q1 and Q2, whatever. Right.
Sure.
And then you lay them out and then you're executing and it's like, man, we're down.
Yeah.
And it's a bummer, even though it's so illogical, because not only are our profits up, but also our the wear on our machine is down. We have way more time in the shop to do other things.
Yeah.
Like improvements. Like it's only good.
Well,
not only good, maybe.
I think it's just, you have to put the metric in context, right? Like revenue is a sort of like, it is a metric of scale. And so if you're going for, if you're trying to increase your scale, it is a metric for that. It's just important to remember that it's not a metric for the entire success of the business.
Right. I think that's right. And I think it is because, so here's the thing. I think a lot of these KPIs, and I think a lot of like the reason a lot of people talk about revenue instead of profit, profit is a really actually quite difficult number to come up with.
It is, yeah.
Whereas revenue is really easy to come up with, like gross revenue. And I think that's the case with a lot of these things, is the metric that people pick is something that's easy to measure.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like this laziness. Like I had a job where my boss really liked hustle, and it seemed to me that the way he measured hustle was how many hours in the day you were sort of working.
Mm-hmm.
And so like an early email or a late email really moved the needle there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really easy metric, right? What time did this guy send me an email at?
And you could automate that.
Yeah, 100%. Like it was a terrible metric, and it was not aligned with the success of the organization.
Yeah.
But I think there's sort of a laziness aspect for myself.
Yeah.
Like I can open my phone and pop open an app and see what our monthly revenue is, our daily revenue, quarterly. So, yeah, I think it's hard because if I then start telling other people what our revenue goals are,
mm-hmm.
that's what people are going to be seeking. Mm-hmm. And like my grandfather ran a big company, and I remember talking to him, and he was saying that one of the things that set them apart, they worked in the bus industry, which is like a lot like the airline industry, mm-hmm. slightly more profitable, but not much. It's very hard to make money.
Yeah.
And they were quite profitable. And one of the things he always said was like, everyone was looking for revenue and we were always looking for profit. Uh-huh. So like they would rather run their buses less and make more money, whereas other people were like, we need to maximize our fleet utilization, you know, all this stuff. And he was like, I don't care about that. Uh-huh. I just I'd rather idle a bus if I'm making more money throughout the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've been kind of, this last week had a similar sort of like, I don't know if you call it like a come to Jesus moment, but I think, how to say this, I'm one of those people who usually has a decent pulse, I think, on the state of things.
Okay.
But that's made me very lazy about having actual metrics for things.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes my gut is like way off.
Okay.
And so we implemented this updated gripper system. And in my head, I've been kind of like, okay, we're going to like hit the ground running with this now. We're going to really develop it and run as much at work as possible through this system. And like, work out the kinks, make the, all the things, all the good things that you read about. And you're like, yeah, let's do it. And so like beginning of the week, I sat down, looked at all the jobs we had for the next month and was like, crap. Like only one or two of these parts can run on that system because of physical size.
Damn.
Or work holding. And it was one of these moments where I was like, I don't actually have a good sense of what we do.
Interesting.
I have a gut sense, and I maybe have like a story I've told myself about the work that we do. But when I stop and actually take stock at this, in this moment, it happened to just be sort of a snapshot of like a month's worth of work.
Yeah.
That story was not true. There might be times in the year when that story is true.
Interesting.
And so it just kind of brought home that I need to start figuring out a way to get a better sense of what types of parts we actually run in what in what percentages.
Yeah.
Because it has far-reaching consequences, right? Like there's this automation system, which we've invested time and money into, but not that much. Like if we can't utilize it across the board, it's not the end of the world. But then there's also the question of machines. Like, do we have the right machines for the work that we do?
Yeah. And then there's a question of sales. Do we have the right work for the machines that we have?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It cuts both ways for sure. And, can't just boil everything down to this one metric again of like, machine part fit, because there's the larger business picture, whereas like there's the economics of what machines you purchase, there's the space constraints, there's usability, there's all these other things. And I think for the past bunch of years, our machines have really been a good fit. But I think it's also really important for me to take stock and say, okay, this has been true. Is it still true? And will it be true in 2 years? Will it be true in 5 years?
Yeah.
how do we make it true, or how do we make another, target condition essentially true? And so that was just an interesting thing for me to kind of come to terms with.
That's very interesting. It definitely makes me think of like, I think this is, I think this is like the point of A3.
Yeah.
And we've been talking a lot about that sort of offline.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think it is way more common than anyone sort of realizes to do exactly what you did and I do all the time, which is like, you have these assumptions in your head, and then we're like all about sort of like solution oriented people, right? It's like, oh, I'm having this problem. All right, we could do this and we could do that. And I feel like we like early on in our friendship, like we bonded over kicking around like crazy ideas, right? But the funny thing is like that should be like out of 10 hours, that should be like on hour 6 or 7, right? It's like, that's crazy. And the reason for that first 6 hours, the point of that first 6 hours is exactly what we're saying. Like, it doesn't matter what we think about what our part sizes are or whatever. It's like, what are they? Like, factually, what is the list?
Yeah.
And then historically, what has the list been? And then I would imagine going through that process, you'd kind of land on like, oh, there's sort of these groups, and maybe there's like, I feel like there would be realizations about what types of parts, or maybe it could help direct the sales process on the one, like there's probably like 4 or 5 root causes, right?
Yeah.
Of like what parts you're running and what the implications are. And then also like your current automation system might still be a great piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. I think it's a very good piece of the puzzle. It's just not the whole puzzle as maybe I had in my head.
Right. It's like, once I get this thing done.
I mean, I knew it wasn't the whole puzzle. I knew there would be a lot of work that we were going to have to do, hand loaded, et cetera, et cetera.
Just the percentage was not.
Yeah, I was
correct.
thinking, it's maybe,
it's like 30 or 40.
Yeah, at best.
Yeah.
Not like 60, which is kind of what my hope was.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing.
Huh.
It's a lot of work though to figure out that actual, at least in my current system, I don't have a good way to say, okay, how many of my parts fit within this envelope?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of work is relative to not doing it 100%, but relative to it's probably like what, an hour or 2, you'd have a much better sense than you do currently.
Yeah, probably.
Right? Of just like going through stuff.
That depends on what my scope was.
Right.
Maybe for a year. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a perfect transition into sort of the theme.
Yeah.
Or the other part of the theme. Good metrics being part 1. Part 2. So I think over the last number of episodes or months or something, we've sort of talked about a lot of the books we're reading. A kind of like Toyota puts a huge emphasis on planning.
Yes.
And it's like put like 60% of your time into planning, and or like even like 90% of your time into planning, and 10% is execution, and the execution goes so much faster and all this stuff. And like sort of trying to wrestle with that, it didn't really sit right with me. But coming from Toyota, it is, I think, I don't know. I always look at Toyota, like I think everyone gets tired of like, oh, Toyota's so awesome, whatever. Like, I think it can come off as sort of like let's just blindly follow Toyota and do what Toyota does.
Sure. I
think more than that, it's like, and this is slightly off topic, but it's more like working with a mentor. Like, you're not going to listen to the mentor 100% and do exactly what they tell you all the time.
Sure.
But it is worth noting, like, they have been doing this just for more years than other people. This being like lean or Toyota production system, or really just like scientific thinking and like deeply thinking about what they're doing and where they're trying to be and what challenges are actually keeping them from their goals.
Yeah.
And so it's just worth seeing what they do, because I think even you and I, like in the last 2 years, every time you implement a new part or a new aspect and that sort of clicks, and you implement that in the shop, like it surfaces the need for the next piece. And you're like, oh, this is why production leveling is like so key. Yeah. Okay, now I see. So like just noting it in that way. But I think the struggle is looking at their emphasis on planning and comparing that with, I would say, my career has the success, like my success has been in just trying a lot of things. Like someone comes with an idea and it's like, well, let's make a very quick prototype that takes us 2 hours and then we can try it. And
and also just like, the whole, 2-minute lean thing, which is just like make all these like quick, like unplanned improvements, just like see something, change something.
Right. And building that into the culture. And so like those seem at odds to me. It's like, should we stop and do A3 to decide if we should move this pile of paper to the other side of the printer? Like maybe yes, maybe no. I think it's like, I don't know. Like it was just hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I told you yesterday, but I introduced A3 to my crew yesterday for the first time. We hadn't talked about it before yet. And I kind of was waiting until I actually had a printout for them to look at.
Makes sense.
Thing. Speaking of which, I went to find like a template online. There's a lot of different ones. Some of them seem kind of crappy. Yeah. So make sure you pick a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Or make your own.
Sam actually found one that was really cool and then had a second one where they sort of like a second slide where it was the same one but explained, and then a third one with it filled out as like an example.
We should.
It was very good.
You should post a link to that or something for everybody, and also send it to me. Anyway, so I like kind of explained the concept, and they're like, "So, I mean, do we do this for everything? Like, if we break an end mill?" And it was kind of like, well, sort of depends on the situation. If it's a production job and we keep breaking the same end mill, yes. If we break an end mill once, in our case, no.
Right.
And I think learning where. Well, again, I don't think there's any rules. I think it's totally in context to your particular shop and business and how your systems run.
Yeah. So I read a section of this book, Toyota Kata, that kind of made that where that line is kind of click for me. And so
at least in their system.
Well,
it made sense for you as well.
I think it made sense for me because I think my like the past whatever number of years I've sort of very heavily been on the side of like, okay, everyone talks a lot, let's just try something. And that has been like every job I get is like, oh yeah, like this guy will just make a prototype and then by the end of the month we will have 7 prototypes and we can actually do user testing and we can actually get real results and we're actually like moving instead of planning. And so that then reading these books and the emphasis really being on planning, it was kind of like, okay, what am I not getting? And I'm going to listen because it's coming from Toyota. Yeah. So I'm going to at least try to like figure out what's going on. And so the thing in the Toyota Kata that was made clear to me was there was, I forget the exact line. I should have written it down, but it was basically just talking about like, that there is a big emphasis on trying things fast, and like if you notice a problem there, like if you should be able to solve it or at least try something within like 10 minutes. And I was just like, okay, it is impossible to sit there and plan out and understand the current condition and so on fully all the time for every single one if you're encouraging that. And so I think this is like
so that was a problem on a production line.
Whatever you notice, like a safety problem, like walking through the plant and it's like, oh, there's a blind corner here. Okay, how can we, I don't know, deal with that? There's so many examples, but so I think what I realized is just like, if you think about like standing in the middle of like a compass and it's like, which direction should you go? Just trying things fast is a terrible idea because it's like where are you headed? Yeah. And so I think the important thing, and this isn't like a clear line, but the important thing is to understand, to get a sense of direction and like get a deep understanding of like key metrics and like measurable aspects and root causes and all that of a particular area. It is worth doing A3, and it is worth really like taking a few hours or a few days to like deeply understand a problem. Yeah. Once you do, it's not that you shouldn't revisit it, but at that point you just need to try things and try things fast. And like,
Sure.
you need to understand what your goal is for learning.
Yeah, it's sort of like using a sailing analogy. It's like the A3 is to like chart your course, and then once you're on course, the small improvements are like course corrections and like making sure your sails are trimmed and checking to make sure that all of, whatever, your ropes aren't about to fray and break or something.
I guess I might phrase it slightly differently. I would say like maybe it's like picking a destination, and then you get in a boat, and then you're like, okay, is paddling faster? Is like hoisting this piece of fabric faster?
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know how you're going to get there. You just have a sense of direction. And then it's kind of like,
it seems like it might be kind of a gradient then, where like as you get further and further, A3 falls off, and you probably have to continue to use A3, but at lesser frequency as you get into the project.
Your horizon will also shift. So
yeah.
then you can like A3 further out. But yeah, I think like that's kind of the question is like, we have a destination now, like if you just hop into a boat and go like, okay, let's go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't know where you're going to end up at all. But if you're sort of like, okay, we know we want to head north.
Yeah.
How do we head north? Then I think this is where like move fast and break things comes in. If you then sit on the shore for the next 5 hours looking at this boat and going like, well, I think paddling is going to be way more effective than sailing because of wind and because of this and that. Oh, well, I think actually sailing is going to be better. I think we should use a triangular sail. No, I think we should tie the fabric this way. It's like, just get in the goddamn boat and try it. Like, try some things, see if you're heading north.
Right.
Kind of thing. Anyway, there was a list of 5 questions in the Toyota Kata that I thought were good, so I'm going to share them.
Cool.
What is the target condition? The challenge. 2, what is the current condition? 3, what obstacles are now preventing us from reaching the target condition? Which one are we addressing now? 4, what is our next step? And this is the start of our next PDCA cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Plan, do, check, act. So these are the very fast, just like doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5, when can we go and see what we've learned from taking that step? And I think this sort of encapsulates the whole thing, and you can see where the big picture planning is important. Like, what is the target condition? That turns out to be a very hard problem, a very hard question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah. This also, like, these 5 steps basically encompass the A3 process.
Yeah. Right. I mean, they're basically straight mapped to that. And the cool thing about reading about A3 is there's a lot of people have put a lot of thought into how to answer these questions and techniques to make sure you're answering them right. And so like, there's just a lot of information on that. Yeah. So like, what is the target condition? That's actually a hard one to answer. What is the current condition? Again, like most of us go into these problems without having an answer to that question.
No. Yeah. Just a gut sense often.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I think, yeah.
Coming back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What obstacles are now preventing us from reaching the target condition? I really like this one because I think, again, it is easy for me to sort of be like, without really addressing each of these problems, to sort of go in and be like, oh, this tool is awesome. Mm-hmm. And I think we should get it because it's going to help us do this task faster. And that is really vague and maybe totally misses the target. Instead of like, we're trying to move in this direction of like, okay, tightening our vice jaws. Mm-hmm. We want to reduce the time, let's say. I'm making this up and quickly, so it's probably inaccurate. But we're trying to reduce the time of our setups. Our current condition is this many seconds. Our target condition is this many seconds. What obstacles are preventing us now? Then you can actually go and look at like, oh, how many seconds is each thing taking us? Instead of like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go buy a drill to start screwing and unscrewing our vice jaws. Mm-hmm. And that just gut check feels right.
Right.
And it does.
It does feel right. But yeah, I don't know if we've stopwatched, but we have found that it's not always faster in that particular
That's
instance.
very interesting. I would have thought it was faster, what I was going to say, but that's funny you say that because, right, like go and see what's going on. I was going to say like there's probably more time savings in like blowing off the jaws before the mill stops running or something.
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
right. Yeah.
And that's free.
Big picture.
That's just the order is different.
Yeah.
All of these are pretty good. What is our next step? Like, yeah, what are we just going to try? And then I really like the question of, I guess I like all of them, but when can we go and see what we've learned from taking the step?
This one's really a banger.
Like when can we actually go see results? I think that's worth asking because it prevents scope creep. It puts the emphasis back on what are we trying to learn here and when are we going to have results?
Yeah.
Instead of like I love that thing about like most people think of prototyping as, I'm forgetting what book this was from, but think of prototyping as like we're going to build Rev 1 basically.
Right.
Not what portion of this can we build to learn the thing we need to learn?
Or how quickly can we get to Rev, like version we can show to the public?
Yeah, but what's the point of showing it to the public? Presumably you're trying to learn, will they pay us money for it? And so
no, exactly. Like,
yeah,
instead of thinking like how Rev 1, you're thinking how can we get through all of the problems to a point where we have something where we've, effectively come up with a solution that is complete.
I guess I'm sort of saying I don't care about complete. I want to know okay, this is a great example. Prototype, like if the question is, will people give us money? What is the cheapest way to trick someone into thinking that the thing exists? Like the prototype might be a website that has a rendering and a price tag, and you just see if people send you their money.
Yeah.
And then you send their money back. That's the experiment. And like people skip that.
Right.
But it's way cheaper than actually building a car or building.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yes.
I think I was looking at the big picture. Like often people focus on this like one step instead of saying like, how can we break this into a bunch of little steps that gets us to our eventual goal?
Yeah. And I think each step needs to be like, why are we actually like, what's the cheapest, fastest way to achieve the learning we need to learn here? And I think treating every action in the company as that, like for us doing A3, the point is not to come up with solutions that are better at this stage. The point for me of doing A3 right now is that organizationally, we need to be like, we need to get good at this. Right.
Yeah.
So like right now, that's the goal. The goal is to learn how to do A3 for me.
Yeah. It's, it's interesting just on the daily coming back to like, how do we fit this in? That's like the third leg of this paradox sort of.
Yeah.
The third leg of this binary.
Pretty much.
Like this or this. And then how do we do either?
Yeah. I mean, another part Toyota Kata was talking about in this chapter that I really liked, it was sort of laying out what happens when the focus is on outcomes instead of process. And so like, I think it's really easy for the focus to be on producing buckles. But the second that happens, that is a local optimum in a funny way.
Right.
And so, but it's so easy to do. It's like, okay, we want to make this many a week, which means we want to sell this many a week, which means all these other things. But the fact is, like, that's not the goal. And the second it is the goal, you start chasing that goal instead of chasing the goal of like for Toyota, their long-term goal, I believe, or one of them, is 1-by-1 production.
Yeah.
Which is their rephrasing of single piece flow for various reasons.
Interesting.
And 100% value add, which both of those things are probably unachievable, but that is their goal. Their goal is not making cars.
Right.
And it's very easy every day to be in the shop being like, what is my goal here? Okay, I need to get through these 10 parts. And so you stop, like organizational learning, like decreases or doesn't increase, wherever your starting point is. And like to your point of like, where do we put in time? I think the way they look at it is if you're not improving, you're falling behind.
Yeah.
And so it is imperative to our long-term success that we are improving every day, and car making is almost a distraction.
Right.
I don't know how to square that circle because you also need to pay your bills from what I understand.
You really do. Yeah. Like that person we were talking to the other day, you're like, well, I'm not sure I've met a lending institution that doesn't want you to pay them back. It seems like witchcraft.
Yeah.
Pretty sure most companies need to pay their bills. So that is sort of necessity number one if you wish to stay in business.
Yeah, right. But then you could also say necessity number one is actually like flowing value to your customer. And I think often that is sacrificed because of these shorter term goals we come up with of like if you think about like efficiently flowing value to your customer as the key piece of being in business long term.
Yeah.
Actually, a focus on results day to day often is at odds with that because you are making short term choices, like expediting. Oh, this is a great one. We've been noticing this all the time. Anytime you're expediting, it is because of a breakdown in information flow in your company. It's been really interesting. Expediting is basically going like, oh, let me reorder these tasks because of the order they're needed. Yeah. And if that doesn't happen automatically, or if that needs to happen at all, there is some other issue, which has been really interesting to think about because we waste a lot of time expediting.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, oh, actually, that color isn't actually that important because we don't go through them that fast. We actually should do this color, right? And it's like, oh, wait, why do we need to sit here doing that? It's been interesting. But
cool.
Yes. And so expediting is like a short-term firefighting approach.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies basically reward people, really good firefighters, because they are goal-based. It's like, let's get them out there. They always deliver. And like, that's an emphasis on results instead of an emphasis on process, which is like, firefighting is the worst because yes, we have this skilled person now, but they might move on and then we're like dead in the water.
And they get burned.
They get burned. They get burnt out. There's no like institutional learning.
Yeah.
From each of these fire events. There's no time for that. Anyway, it's bad news and
don't do it.
Yeah, but also ship on time. No. Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good place for us to wrap up for this one, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I had one other piece that I'll just throw in here, which is a short thing.
Yes.
FIFO, first in, first out, is the way to do most inventory. The difficulty there, and there was an interesting recommendation of not doing first in, first out if your total inventory is longer than some period of time, and you need to decide what period of time that is, because now you have more time between the operating conditions that created that inventory and when you go to use it. And so if there are errors, it's very hard to chase down what caused the errors.
Sure.
Which I thought was very interesting. And we may change how we do our inventory, where we keep safety inventory.
You may change how you do your buffer stock, basically.
Yeah, and instead of doing first in, first out, FIFO, we will do a safety stock, which is inventory we've QC'd really carefully. We're thinking of adding a Kanban card that's a different color that triggers like some A3 activities, or like a group meeting of like, what happened? Like, why are we dipping into this stock? And then cutting our inventories drastically where we use the most recent batch, so there's less latency between when that batch was made and when it gets into final assembly, so we can trace down
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was like, that's interesting, because I've always heard like FIFO, like use the oldest stuff first, right? And that's an interesting caveat to that.
It is quite interesting.
Anyhow.
Cool. Well, we will catch you all in a few days. Thanks for listening. You can find me on Instagram at Lycan_MFG.
And you can find me also on Instagram at austere_manufacturing.
Shoot us some notes. Tell us what you think.
Absolutely. Also, apologies for last week's audio and release dates.
Yes.
There's some major issues. Anyway, thanks all for listening. Catch you later in the week.
See ya.